Type 1 diabetes cure update. This news is about Vertex. If you haven't heard about it, Vertex Pharmaceuticals out of Boston is in the middle of a huge trial called VX-880. So far they have 10 patients with type 1 diabetes who are completely off insulin. These patients are also on the immunosuppression drug tacrolimus, which greatly limits the amount of patients with type 1 diabetes that this particular therapy is going to be able to cure. But I have some good news. So about 2 days ago, Vertex's stock dropped about $100 per share. You can see that right here. That is not because of their type 1 diabetes platform. That is because of a pain medication that they were working on that is not going so well. But the reason I'm showing you this document here is because the CEO just bought $3.9 million worth of shares, and the longtime director of Vertex, Bruce Sachs, bought $1.9 million worth of shares. So that's just shy of $6 million worth of shares between the CEO and the longtime director at Vertex. This sends a very strong, positive valuation message of what Vertex is currently working on. And the other big thing they're working on right now is curing type 1 diabetes. If the CEO and the longtime director at Vertex were not excited about what's coming on their type 1 diabetes platform, do you think that they would have just dropped $6 million on this big dip in their own stock? No, I do not think they would have. So this news bodes very well for the type 1 diabetes platform. It makes me very excited that they would drop that much on their own stock because of what's about to come. Right now, Vertex is finishing up dosing approximately 50 patients for their pivotal trial. They plan on submitting for FDA approval next year, 2026, and the rumor is that they could potentially start treating patients in 2027. The very first people that are going to be eligible for this particular therapy are people that are already on immunosuppression or people that experience frequent, dangerous low blood sugars. Those were the two things that they've talked about. I don't know the specifics of those two things, but those are just the two things that have been mentioned. However, Vertex has also dropped a lot of hints that in the future, there could be some collaborations with less toxic immunosuppression, superior immunosuppression. These are kind of the buzzwords that are being thrown around. I believe they're talking about Elodon's drug tegoprubart. If you haven't watched my 3-part video series on that, then you need to go watch it because you're behind and you will understand what I'm talking about. Elodon's drug is very exciting. They've cured 3 patients with type 1 diabetes already. And I sense a future collaboration between Elodon and Vertex because Vertex has the cells and Elodon has the drug to protect those cells. It's a match made in heaven. The best part about Elodon's drug tegoprubart is that it has no toxicity to the kidney or the nervous system, whereas the current drug tacrolimus does. And anybody with kidney dysfunction isn't even eligible for an islet cell transplant with tacrolimus. But Elodon is starting a new trial with a certain subgroup of patients who have kidney dysfunction, and they're going to get an islet cell transplant with this new drug tegoprubart because it does not cause kidney toxicity like tacrolimus. So Elodon has cured 3 people with type 1 diabetes. They are completely off insulin, and they are going to dose 6 more patients that they have funding for right now. I imagine they're going to get even more funding to dose even more patients as we go along. And they also announced this special subset of patients with some type of kidney dysfunction that are also going to be dosed, who also have type 1 diabetes. But here's where I kind of want to bring this all together. Vertex right now is laser focused on getting FDA approval for VX-880. That is their first therapy that is going to be used with the old nasty immunosuppression drug tacrolimus initially, but I imagine it's not going to stay with tacrolimus for too long. The thing that makes Vertex really special is their line of drugs for cystic fibrosis, and they have made a lot of money off those drugs, and they have invested over $2 billion into curing type 1 diabetes. They are all in on this, you guys. So the thing about Vertex and their cystic fibrosis drugs is that they didn't bring just one drug to market. They brought a drug to market, but then they have made several improvements on this entire platform of cystic fibrosis. And they have a really good medication. I think it's called Trikafta, if I'm saying that correctly. And it's kind of like 3 cystic fibrosis drugs combined into one. So I bring that up because I believe they're going to do the same thing with type 1 diabetes. They're going to get this first trial approved by the FDA, VX880, and then they're going to improve upon it. And they might collaborate with a company like Elodon Pharmaceuticals and use their drug, tegoprubart, in combination with their cells. It's a much better option than tacrolimus for many reasons. Tacrolimus is nephrotoxic, neurotoxic. It causes hypertension and type 2 diabetes, insulin resistance over time, and it also is toxic to your nervous system and your kidneys. Tegoprubart is none of those things. So yeah, I think there's going to be a future collaboration. And on top of that, the drug tegoprubart, it works 4 to 5 times more efficiently in producing insulin than the beta cells that are being protected by the old nasty drug tacrolimus. So now you understand why Vertex's cells and Elodon's drug tegoprubart are a match made in heaven. And beyond that, Vertex is also working on their hypoimmune platform. Of course, they would love to provide beta cells to patients with type 1 diabetes that don't require any amount of immunosuppression or immunomodulation. They are working on that behind the scenes right now too, 24/7. They're really working hard on that. And maybe they've found something and maybe they haven't. But what we do know is that Elodon's drug has cured 3 patients with type 1 diabetes, and there's going to be more to come, and that's very exciting. And this specific avenue with Vertex's cells and Elodon's drug tegoprubart, it could be the cure for type 1 diabetes for the foreseeable future. So I know I've talked about a lot of different things here tonight. Sorry that I've kind of been all over the place, but I hope I helped you understand a little bit about what's going on with Vertex behind the scenes. They're not going to talk about this stuff because they're laser focused on getting FDA approval for their very first therapy, VX880. But I hope you can understand now kind of what's brewing behind the scenes right now. And it might just have something to do with why their CEO and their director just dropped $6 million in their own stock. There are big things ahead for Vertex. Big things. And I love this company so much.